Welcome to the spring drink making class. I'm so excited to see everyone today, and it's just awesome. We're getting towards the end of April. Can't wait for all the beautiful sunshine that's coming our way. And yeah, so welcome. I'm Andrea Allen. I'm the co-founder of Onyx Coffee Lab. I'm the 2020 US Barista Champion and the second place 2021 World Barista Champion. But I just gave my title away this past weekend, 2 weekends ago now in Boston. Super excited to a friend of mine named Morgan, and she did a really great job. So shout out to Morgan for being awesome and for winning USBC. It's a huge deal. So glad to have everyone tonight. Just want to start off by thanking Breville and Crate & Barrel for making this series available for everyone. So yeah, it's super exciting. I want to tell you just a little bit about my trip to Boston and the Specialty Coffee Association's Expo, which is its annual trade show that we have every year, although we haven't had it since 2019. And so it was like really fun to get everyone back together. I got to work a little bit with Breville at the show, which was super fun. They had a really cool booth that was a representation of like 4 different styles of coffee shops, and they're all different like roasters and folks like serving coffee and just having a great time. And it was super fun and really great. So yeah, so let's talk a little bit about spring and the way that translates over into beverages. So kind of as we approach spring, we are thinking about things like sunshine coming our way. We're thinking about all the things summer has to offer. If you're like me, you're also probably like just casually frustrated that it's raining all the time. So I'm located in Arkansas, and it really feels like every day it rains for a little while. And my 7-year-old daughter River always reminds me that it's raining and that's going to make flowers, and I think that feels exciting, but I'm kind of ready for it to get here. So the 2 different drinks we're making today are kind of very representative of that desire to have like warm sunshine and move forward, and then also like a recognition of the like beautiful, humid, wet, blooming green and just flower-filled spring that a lot of us experience. So I'm super excited about both of these drinks. They're really great and can't wait to make them with you today. So just a quick side note, we have a chat feature on this class today. So if you have any questions at any point throughout this time, I would love for you to just put them in the chat. And I'll answer them as we go along. And then at the very end, we will answer them. I'll just answer like any remaining questions. But anytime you have a question, just put it in there, and I would love to answer it. I might need just a little bit of ice. So I want to start off tonight just talking a little bit about espresso. So most of the time when we gather together like this, I don't talk a ton about espresso because espresso is just an incredibly interesting, wild beast of an ingredient, and it takes a lot. It both takes a lot to like really explain and understand espresso, and at the same time, espresso can be very, very simple. So I actually just had a conversation with this gal today that came to meet with me at Onyx, and I didn't know her at all. I just met her today. And I was talking to her, and she was like, I have to tell you that just 2 months ago, I got a Breville for my house. And she was just telling me about how she opened the box and she was so excited, and there were so many pieces inside the box that she felt kind of overwhelmed and was like, I'm never going to be able to learn how to do this. But then she said, it's only been 2 months, and I just started putting everything together and just started playing with it. And now I'm making incredible coffee, and I will like never not make coffee in my house again. And it was really fun to have that conversation with her, because I think sometimes we think you have to be this full-on like coffee expert professional to make great coffee. And for me today is just a good reminder, like you can be someone just pursuing it at your house and still make incredible coffee. I also like to just think that whatever coffee you enjoy is what you should drink at your house. So people always want to know what kind of drinks I drink at my house, and I just drink regular old coffee at my house. But yeah, I think coffee is whatever you enjoy. So don't feel intimidated if you're just like entering this world of making specialty coffee at home or making espresso or even like making some of these drinks. It's like, if it tastes good to you, then it is good. Great. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about espresso. So the first drink we're making is an espresso tonic. It is very much in the spirit of a gin and tonic. It's going to utilize tonic water, of course, espresso. We're going to get some like sweetness and acidity from a mix of fruit juices. But the base and the hero and the building block of this entire drink is going to be our shot of espresso. So I've got our geometry coffee from Onyx today that I'm making. I chose that because it's a blend of Ethiopia coffees and Colombia coffees. It has a lot of nice acidity and sweetness that I wanted to use to just continue to add on top of the sweetness that the juice is going to use in our recipe that we're making today. So the machine I'm using today is the Breville Barista Pro, and it has the 54 millimeter basket, which is the smaller size basket in the Breville lineup. Also, it's so funny. I'm trying to show it the right way. There we go. That was great. It was like a floating hand. So in this 54 millimeter basket, it is going to be a slightly smaller recipe and amount of coffee that I put into this. So I'm actually, I normally recommend putting in around 15 grams. I'm actually putting in around 16 grams to this today. And I'll show you after I dose it out. It's a lot of coffee in here. So basically what I'm going to do is dose the coffee into my portafilter. I'm going to settle the coffee in, and you're going to see it's like a big old mound. I'm going to like kind of do some of this action and tap to settle. I'm going to distribute with my finger so that everything is nice and smooth and even. So that then when I go to tamp, it'll just be a straightforward, straight down, even across the board, which is going to encourage an even extraction throughout the time that the espresso is brewing. Extraction is a fancy word for brew. So basically it's just about how much of the potential soluble elements in the espresso is going to dissolve into the water. And so I'm using 16 grams of coffee into my portafilter. I'm going to pull out just under, it's about 1.5 ounces total. I'm going to basically be pulling what's considered a double shot, but it's also just kind of the standard shot that I would pull on this size basket. So it's right around 1.5 ounces. And I'm hoping that to do it in about 24 seconds. Okay, let's walk through it together. So on this machine, just stick this in here. I'm going to let it grind. Just take a little grind break here. Perfect. Okay, so I want to show you this giant mound. Oh my gosh, it's coming out. All right. Yep, so you can see I've got a lot of coffee in there. And part of that is just how this recipe is built, but also once I get it settled in, it's gonna like just be nice and even on the top. This is a little more settling than I would normally do just in terms of tapping, but I'm just trying to make sure everything gets nice and smooth into the espresso or into the portafilter basket so that when I start, when I go to tamp, it's nice and even. And then when it extracts, all the water can engage fully with all of the coffee grounds in the portafilter without finding the easy way out. I like to say, and that's not just me, it's like literally every coffee professional says that water is lazy. So it'll find like the easiest path out of the portafilter possible. So that's one of the reasons it's just so important for it to be nice and even. Okay, so now I've got my tamper. And basically what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to put my tamper right on the top. And I'm just going to actually just slide it right over here so everybody can see. Okay, right here on the top, it's nice and even. I'm going to do this like 90-degree angle with my arm, and I'm going to push straight down. Okay? So there's nothing magic about the tamp. You don't need to push like ultra hard. You just need to get a good amount of pressure on there. 40 pounds of pressure is the accepted amount. But really that's just like, for me, I just kind of like tilt my body weight over and it goes. Okay, so now I'm going to lock it in, turn it on. Again, I'm kind of hoping for 1.5 ounces out here at about 24 seconds. But with this particular coffee, if it like goes a little longer, If it goes a little shorter, it's still going to be awesome. Okay, so you can see it's coming out. It's a nice flow. It starts off dark. It's going to get lighter. That's all super normal. All right, 23 seconds. Thank you, Geometry Coffee, for making what I said come true. I see a question about grind size. So grind size is one of the big questions that I get asked about a lot, especially in this scenario that we're talking through right now. So the grind size I am on is a grind size 12. If I were you and you were going to try this coffee, or you're just going to like make espresso in general, I would not aim to put it on any particular grind size, because every coffee is different. And in fact, coffee as it ages also changes. So if I'm brewing espresso on a grind size 12 here in Arkansas, and you're in Washington State, or you're in Missouri, or you're in Alabama, and you have a slightly, you have the same machine I do, but it's going to have been used how many times. Like, it's just slightly different. There's tons of variables that affect the way that espresso and coffee behave when you start making it this way. So I'm at a grind size 12. I would just say throw your coffee in there and pull a shot just to see where you're at. And then as you need to go longer in your extraction or shorter in your extraction, you'll just change the grind size. So the analogy here is that the smaller the grind size, the harder the water has to work to come out, the longer it takes, the higher the extraction rate is. The other side of that is like that the more coarse the coffee is, the easier the water can come out, the less time it takes, the lower extraction rate you have. And I just always recommend tasting your coffee, because if you brew it and it like brews completely different than what I just brewed and you like it, go for it. Okay, so in this espresso tonic recipe, kind of the first step is just to brew your coffee, and then I'm actually going to put it in this decanter. And the reason that we're doing this first is because I really want the coffee, the espresso, to chill before I put it in with the juice and the ice and all of the things. So using espresso in an ice drink is kind of an interesting thought process. If you have ever encountered an iced espresso drink, it often has this really super particular flavor to it. And there's this thought process of like wanting the coffee to chill so that its flavor can continue to open up as it interacts with air before you start mixing with other ingredients. Really, as soon as you put espresso with another ingredient, the flavor of it is going to be kind of like frozen in time, captured right then. So for this, I want it to cool. I want the flavors to open up. I want to make sure I have all of the sweetness, the acidity, and that kind of fruitiness that this coffee gives in this drink. So I'm doing this for like a really long time, and I'm going to let it sit here for a few minutes while I kind of like put the rest of the drink together. Okay. So someone's asking me just about my extraction time, which I was shooting for 24 seconds. It actually was at 23 seconds. And the question is just about like, is 25 to 35 seconds like the appropriate range? And the answer is that there is no appropriate range, and not to be slippery about the definition of espresso. But espresso, you can think of espresso as a method brewing coffee that has different recipes for different coffees. So you would typically want to brew your espresso in I think, in my opinion, in the 20-second range, like 20 to 30 is usually what I think about. But I like slightly less extracted coffees. So I like really never brew any of my espressos longer than 25 seconds. That's just my personal preference, but it's also like the recipe that I'm creating for this coffee. So if you pull an espresso shot at 32 seconds and you like the way it tastes, that's totally cool too. So there's both like really kind of what I think of as rigid standards when you think about like your exact preparation of espresso before you start making it. But then it's almost like when you're learning to be a poet, like you have to learn all the rules of poetry before you can then start writing. So you kind of have to like learn the rules of espresso before you start breaking them. So I do think it's good to have like those standards within which you work. But for this particular coffee, the way I want it to taste is best reflective around 24 seconds. Long answer to a short question. Thanks for asking, though. That's a great question. I get asked that question all the time. Okay, great. So I'm going to go ahead and start building the drink. I'm going to start just by putting some ice in my cup here. All right. And so I'm going to start with the juice. So this is for this drink, I put together a 1/2 ounce of lime juice and a 1/2 ounce of orange juice. My goal there was that the orange juice has like a ton of like, first of all, incredible orange flavor, but also a really high level of sweetness as well as acidity. The lime has that more like mellow flavor going on, less sweetness, but like a slightly different kind of acidity. And so I just like the way they work together. I've actually already mixed them together, so I'm just going to pour an ounce here in the bottom of my cup. Just put a little bit extra in for good measure. All right, and so then I'm going to go ahead and put my tonic water in. The build for this drink is like super straightforward, but the flavor of this drink is incredibly complex. So this is one of the more straightforward drinks that I've done on this series, and it's literally just kind of a process of pouring things together. But with this amount of and variation of ingredients in this drink, it's just going to be like really complex when you drink it. So it's going to have that kind of like bitter, quinine forward kind of situation that you get with tonic water. It's going to have the sweetness and the acidity. And then what the espresso is going to add into it is sweetness, a little bit of salinity, and also a tiny touch of fruit. So salinity is just like your little touch of salt. This drink actually has that full roundness that we look for when we talk about balance. So salt, acid, bitter, and even like a touch of umami from this, from the tonic water, excuse me. So it actually has that full flavor. So coffee definitely has salt potential in it. And actually the lower the extraction on the coffee, the like more salty it tastes. So I didn't necessarily brew this to be salty, but it does have like a touch of salt in it, which actually creates really fun balance. Okay, so that's basically it. I'm just literally going to pour this on top. And so I actually do use a strainer when I'm doing this. And at this point, most of my crema is gone. Crema is just that lighter colored layer on top of the espresso. And over time, like the air bubbles like pop and the crema goes away. But crema actually is the more bitter element in the like flavor profile of an espresso. So when I make this drink, I usually recommend that you strain just in case there is any remaining crema, because you already have some building blocks of bitterness in this espresso, of course, but also the tonic water has its own like vibrant bitterness going on. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of put this together, pour this over the top. Perfect. Awesome. So you can see we've got a little bit of layering going on, and everyone knows I love layers, but I'm not even necessarily particularly shooting for a layer on this drink. But I do think it's kind of nice always when coffee is not just brown. So for me, if I was gonna like make this and serve this like at my house or at the shop, I would leave it kind of layered, and then I would let my customer kind of swirl it or stir it as they would like. I definitely think before you drink this, you do need to like give it a stir or give it a swirl just so you can like get that full range of the juice from the bottom up into the top of the drink. And then I love garnish, so I would just like kind of slide. This is a slice of dried grapefruit, which just kind of like gives the drink a little bit of character. It gives it just like a slight color pop. And then of course, grapefruit is like the ultimate bitter citrus, which is very representative of the flavor profile of this drink in general, because it's the citrus from the juice, the bitterness from the quinine in the tonic water and in the espresso, and then there's a sweet note throughout from the orange juice and also from the sweetness in the espresso. It looks so great. I was just like admiring it in my little viewer window here from the side. So this drink is kind to me and it looks nice today. Thank you, Espresso Tonic drink. Okay, question: is normal sparkling water an acceptable substitute for someone who doesn't like tonic water? This is a great question, and I'm just going to say yes, because I do think that makes sense. I actually don't love tonic water either. I think it works really well in this drink, but it does have that vibe going on. So if you want to substitute something else in, I think putting just some sparkling water in there works. But if I were you and you want to stay away from that bitterness of the sparkling, of tonic water and do sparkling water instead, I actually might put like a little bit of just like standard sweetness into the drink to just go ahead and push it over to having a little bit more complex of an experience. And I would just think about doing that with like just kind of a standard like raw sugar, simple syrup, or just like a touch, just to like push it onto the side of sweetness, because tonic water actually also has a pretty decent amount of sugar in it. I kind of forgot about that when I was talking about it earlier, but it has a lot of sweetness in it too. So it's bringing more to the drink than just that bitterness. So I think if you're going to do sparkling water, just like put some sweetness in there too, just so that you can like tie everything together. Putting like hot espresso in a drink like this is one of the most difficult things to do without it just tasting like totally off the wall. So, putting espresso, like there's kind of this funny, it's not really a joke, but there's just like this funny thing for me whenever I like love cocktail menus and like looking at how people use coffee in various like drink applications. And the most like every bar that has a coffee cocktail basically has a chocolate espresso martini. Why? Because it's like really hard to put espresso into a cocktail or a drink of any kind that doesn't have like a really super forward amount of sweetness, because it is naturally bitter. And then when you combine that with something that's really like sharp or, you know, bitter forward, or just like has a ton of alcohol in it, just like a spirit, it really like gets super intense really quick. So most people like put like tons of chocolate in that espresso martini with either vodka or gin, and then espresso and sometimes cream, you know, just things like that. And that's actually one of the reasons why a lot of coffee bars have that are like vanilla latte, mocha, white chocolate mocha, like that cream, and then that heavy or just like sweet syrup that kind of makes espresso kind of go into the next realm. That's a way to do it. So anytime you depart from that like cream, like standard sweetness situation, you have to work to make balance so that it's not overly bitter. This drink does it pretty good. I've seen other drinks that do it too, but it's really tricky. So that was like a really long way of saying go ahead and use sparkling water, but like you'll have to address the as well. So yay, I'm gonna take a little drink, stir it with something, or maybe I'll just give it a little swirl here. Gosh, that thing is good. I mean, this kind of drink has like a really fun play over your palate. So it's got like the really tight bubble of a tonic, the tonic water in it. It's like super citrusy. It's pretty sweet actually. And then it has like almost like a chocolate kind of flavor going on in it, which is a combination of the espresso and the tonic water. And it's really good. Fun. Okay, let's go to the next drink. So This drink is awesome. This drink is called the Lavender London Fog. And so lavender is super popular flavor this time of year. It has that like herbal thing going. Lavender simple syrup is going to have some sweetness going on in it, which is cool. I wanted to actually mention this really fun experience that I had with lavender at the U.S. Coffee Championships 2 weekends ago. So there was a competitor who actually placed second. Her name is Brooke. She's from Elixir Coffee in Philadelphia. Shout out. She made the signature drink that had like an herbal component that was not lavender, but literally when combined with the coffee, tasted exactly like lavender. And it was rosemary and lemon balm. And basically she just like made a little simple syrup with that. And like on its own, it did not taste like lavender really. But then when it got mixed in with her espresso, I think the espresso had some floral characteristics to it. And it was like one of the greatest signature drinks I've ever tasted. And it was really super fun. And I just kept being like, this drink, I mean, how'd you get all this lavender in here? Because it was really like popping in its flavor. And she was just like, there's no lavender in there at all. And it was like super impressive. So that's kind of a fun, quick story. Okay, so let's talk some about this drink. So basically on the bottom layer, we're going to have lavender simple syrup and a concentrated Earl Grey tea. So I'm using, Onyx has a tea line, and I'm using just like our standard Earl Grey. And so because this is kind of like a layered built drink that is like part tea, part something else, I'm actually going to use like a more concentrated tea recipe than I would use if I was just drinking Earl Grey on its own. So the kind of like the recommended recipe for this tea, if you're drinking it as just like a hot cup of tea, is 5 grams of tea leaves and 175 grams of water, steeped for 3 minutes. So it's going to give you that nice like Earl Grey flavor that we all love, which is that beautiful black tea, the bergamot oil. I mean, it's just like incredibly aromatic. Like we were brewing some in the little tea maker here a bit ago, and just like the whole room smelled like Earl Grey. It's like such a fun flavor, and it's a fun scent. It's just a really great experience. So then when I'm going to go ahead and take this and use it in something else, what I want to make sure to think about is I don't want the other flavors of the drink that I'm making and the ingredients to overwhelm the tea flavor, because I still want it to be a tea. I don't want it to be like something else. I still want to taste that vibrant Earl Grey, bergamot, black tea, like beautiful flavor going on. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to brew the tea a little bit more concentrated. So I'm going to do 5 grams of water and 5 grams of tea and 100 grams of water. So it's not exactly half, but it's like closer on that level. And then I'm going to steep it for 5 minutes. So I'm going to do a longer steep to kind of pull out more of those like flavorful elements and just have a longer extraction time on the tea to build like a more robust flavor. It's going to build a slightly more robust texture as well. So it'll just be a little bit heavier across the palate, like the actual tea itself. I actually like tea that's extracted a little bit longer and a little bit more concentrated. That's just kind of like my personal preference, but I also like really love intense flavor experiences. So I'm like kind of into that. But for this drink specifically, I just want to make sure that it is built to address the tea as like the hero in the drink and not all the other ingredients. So let's go ahead and start building it together. I'm going to do a 1/2 ounce of Earl Grey simple syrup. I always get asked lots of questions about simple syrup. And so basically this tea is, or not tea, this ain't tea. This simple syrup, basically all simple syrup recipes are almost exactly the same. They're usually like half sugar, half water. You cook it until the sugar dissolves, and you need to like stir it and keep up with like how it's brewing, but then or boiling. But then when you're ready, you'll pull it off of the heat and you'll just pour whatever kind of element you want in the syrup as a flavor. So if it's like a vanilla bean, you'll throw it in there, not on the heat, but just pull it off, throw it in, and you'll like soak it overnight and you have vanilla syrup. For this, it's like lavender herbs in there, soaked overnight, strained out, and then you have lavender syrup. You can also use like lavender like oil or lavender extractions, or lavender extract. You can do some things like that too, but that's how this particular drink is made. Okay, cool. So I already brewed the tea a little earlier, so I'm just going to go ahead and pour the tea in. It says 4 ounces, and my goal here is just to get a little bit more than halfway up. Cool. Also, I'm kind of obsessed with this glass. It's like, it like reminds me of like water beading, like tons of moisture, and it just has a really nice spring vibe to me. It's kind of purple. In fact, when I saw this cup, I like hadn't made the drink yet, and I was like, I know exactly what I want to put in there, something lavender. Cool. So this is just like the very basic base of the drink right here. And then the next thing we're going to do is something that we do in almost every class we do together, which is just like a shaken foam on top. So some of you might feel like, why are you always using the shaken foam? And it's because it's awesome, super tasty. It also just like creates incredible like variance of texture and color in a drink. So one of the great things that you can do with a drink is to make different kinds of color in it. The other thing is to play with temperature and texture. So one of the great things about this drink is that there's 2 different temperatures. So the tea, my tea is like not quite as hot as it could be, but like, because I made it a little earlier, but like having a hot tea with like a cold foam on top is incredible, because when you're drinking it, you're encountering that foam that is like heavy, slick, a little bit sweet. I'm going to put a little bit of taro powder in it, which is like kind of a sweetened root powder, and it tastes incredible. And then as you're drinking that, you also like encounter the warm tea below that's been sweetened with lavender. And it's just like a really super fun experience. I think that when we like, a lot of us mostly think about texture, I think, when we're just eating food. But texture in beverage is really fun, and is something that I think like really enhances a drink's like potential, and it makes a drink like something to talk about. So, I think the more you can engage people, for me, with color, flavor, texture, like aroma. I'm a big fan of aromas too. It's really fun. Somebody told me this the other day as a little like quote, and I really loved it, but it's basically like all great conversations happen around a beverage. And I think that is like so true. I feel like we all, when we meet up with friends, we meet for coffee or we meet for drinks, we meet for dinner, and then we sit at dinner for a long time drinking wine or water or coffee or tea, cocktails, whatever it is that we're drinking. And like, we're not usually like talking about those beverages. That's not usually the great conversation that we're having. But beverages are like kind of like the occasion or the vehicle with which we like conduct our like social communities. And so I think that beverages absolutely deserve to be like talked about, experienced, played with, all of those things. So, okay, I'll get off my soapbox now and just finish making this drink. Cool. So for those of you that have had this kind of experience with me before, you know that we're going to basically combine coconut cream, heavy cream, and then I'm going to put a little bit of taro powder in here, and I'm going to shake it with a dry shaker ball to like get tons of nice air in there. So one of the great things that about this like combination of items is that you can use this base recipe of 1 ounce of coconut cream, 2 ounces of heavy whipping cream, and then you can like literally add anything into it to like push it one way or the other. So a lot of times I'll just put a little bit of like simple syrup in it or vanilla just to sweeten it slightly. You can put different kinds of like powders in here. So you can put like spirulina powder in here, which is blue, and this whole drink will be blue, or all the foam will be blue. You can put like the butterfly pea flower in here, and it'll be like this vibrant purple color. There's all different kinds of like fun powders out there that you can put in that are like natural. They're like naturally colored and things like that, so you're not just like playing with food coloring, which if you like food coloring, that's cool. I'm not super into food coloring myself, but I'm trying to think of another one. Oh, matcha, like the matcha green tea powder, you can do that. Your drink is green. Like there's just all kinds of really fun things that you can do that feel super elevated, that are not that complicated, that you can accomplish just by using this exact thought process. You also can, if you're looking for a non-dairy version of this, the coconut cream does not have any dairy in it. Obviously, whipping cream is just like the most dairy you could ever encounter. But if you switch out the heavy whipping cream with something like almond milk or oat milk, this applicant will still work. I just have like, you have to really shake it to get it to foam up. I think that using like a little tiny bit of cream of tartar powder, which is like a whole other like can of worms that I don't necessarily want to like jump into in terms of like foaming something, but that like cream of tartar powder will like, or tapioca starch, just like a touch of something that will like really like help firm up the way that the liquid holds onto the air and creates the structure of the foam. There's ways to do that. In fact, I might do that in our next class that we have in May. We'll see. Okay, great. So I've got my coconut cream, my heavy cream, and I'm just going to put like a tiny, like what I would call like a pinch of this taro powder in here. You can go with more. So if you want it to really take on the flavor of taro or something else, you can add more in there. For me, I think taro is kind of a pretty like dominant flavor. And so again, I like don't want this drink to be a taro drink, or I would have made one. So I want it to be an Earl Grey tea drink. And so I just want to like be really careful and just like have like a hint of that in there. And then just let the tea be the hero. Okay. So you have to shake it for like a really long time to make sure that the air gets in the liquid. And I just feel weird shaking it forever. But this is the work. This is the work you have to do. It'd be great if like we weren't separated by a screen and like thousands of miles between us all, so that somebody could laugh with me a little bit, because it's kind of a funny situation. Okay. I'm just gonna take a peek at this quickly. Okay. All right, so now I'm just gonna like just slowly kind of layer this here on the top of this drink. Actually kind of, before I finish doing that, I'm just going to put a little bit more tea in here just to raise the level in my glass. Okay. So you can see how that's getting some nice separation going on. So just want to talk just a little bit about why this is separating, or not separating, but like why it's layering and just like how that works. So basically when I shake up this heavy whipping cream and the coconut cream, what happens is that like a bunch of air goes into this mixture and makes it kind of fluffy. And you can see like I'm pouring it out. I mean, it is still liquid, of course. But basically, it creates like a buoyancy on top of the tea. So I like that because, like I said, I like want for this to maintain its the structure of the way I built the drink in the first place. So so I want it to stay apart. I don't want it to mix up, because I like the way it looks. And I also want for my guests to be able to experience this drink and its different textures, flavors, and colors separated to start with. I could see like a situation where somebody does stir this up, and I think if that happens, it's great. I think it's more just about this like initial encounter with this drink, and making sure everything stays separate. So I just like put a little like carnation there on the top. I love putting flowers on top of drinks. I think it looks beautiful. I love the colors that it provides. And I think it just like makes like a nice, thoughtful kind of topping to something that is already like incredibly complex and like really try to be super composed so that it looks really nice. Yeah, so this is the drink. I mean, I feel like it's a really great representation of spring as a season, both in the colors that it has, in the kind of flavors and the drink build that it has, and it just like goes really great on a nice like spring Saturday morning or in an evening where you're just hanging out after dinner. Yay! That was so fun. Awesome. So these are my drinks. I'm curious about if anybody has any questions for me, or if anybody is making these at home right now. I would love to for you to just put in the chat like I'm making it, it worked, or like I'm making it, it didn't work, and I can like help you a little bit if you want to. So any questions about the drinks themselves or about making espresso? I know I like just the very brief like touch on espresso. If you're interested in learning more about espresso, Breville has a whole like line of kind of master classes that go through like in detail making espresso, steaming milk, making drinks, which are really great, taught by like coffee professionals that are stationed all over the country. Yeah. Anybody? Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I just want to give like a few final thoughts on both of these drinks. So this drink is like a warm drink with a cool top. This is an ice drink. So these could be really fun as like a drink pairing as well. And so, yeah, I think these drinks are awesome. They are relatively simplistic to make, but certainly not simple in their flavor, color, or presentation. So thanks everyone so much for joining me. If you do make these drinks anytime in the next couple of days, it would be awesome to tag Breville USA or Onyx Coffee Lab just so we can like follow along and see you making these drinks. And again, of course, special thanks to Breville and Crate and Barrel for making these classes possible. We'll be doing another class in May. So I'll look forward to seeing you all then, and we'll make some more drinks together. Thanks, everyone.